Alright lads, welcome back to the channel. This video has been made possible due to my YouTube members, so a big thank you to all the lads currently on screen. Unlike the Americans who got some absolute dregs of a premium in the form of the RDF-LT, the Soviets are again causing a stir in War Thunder with another blatantly overpowered premium. This is the BMD-4M, and put simply, it is a redesign of the BMD-4 so that it now uses the engine and drive chain of the BMP-3. This change meant that several Russian IFVs are now using the same engine and transmission, making it easier to train crews, ease maintenance, and reduce costs across the board. But it is worth noting that this tank has no changes to the firepower compared to the event BMD-4 that we already had in game, as it uses the same turret and weapons. In War Thunder, this gives you a premium version of an already cracked IFV with an even better power to weight ratio and at the same battle rating. It really is funny, the Russians get blatantly overpowered premiums that are super easy to use, whereas the Americans get some absolutely dog shit like Gaijin slapped at a battle rating 11.7 because, well, theoretically it's powerful, 1 second reload. Well, saying that, at least the Americans even get a top tier premium. The French still don't have shit. Anyway, the BMD-4M is a battle rating 9.3 light tank, and it sits in the 6th rank of the Soviet tech tree, meaning it can only efficiently ground vehicles between the ranks of 1 and 7, so this premium cannot be used to unlock tanks such as the T-80BVM or the T-90M for example. The BMD-4M is purchased from the Gaijin store. For the cost of $60 you get the tank, 15 days of premium time, and 2,000 golden eagles. To get the most out of the vehicle you will have to purchase the crew qualifications. For 1,010,000 silver lines you will unlock the expert qualification, and for 2,100 golden eagles you can get yourself the ace quali. Despite the BMD using an autoloader, so the qualification isn't going to make you shoot any faster, it is still going to help you to reduce those repair times and generally give you a little bit better crew performance overall, like faster turret rotation, faster acceleration, that sort of thing. You also have a very strong lineup at battle rating 9.3 now, with lots of flexible and powerful vehicles. Tanks such as the T-64A and the T-72A, as well as the BMPs and other sort of tanks. It's really an exceptional lineup at battle rating 9.3 for the Soviets, with the only real downside being the lack of a decent cash jet at that battle rating. So lads, is the BMD-4M worth the money? You can't grind out top tier, and you already have a fantastic 10.3 premium lineup with the T-80UD, the T-72AB terms, as well as the 2S38. So with 10.3 being absolutely cracked, is it worth investing in a 9.3 lineup? Well, stick around for the rest of the video to find out. For most 9.3 Soviet enjoyers such as myself, who already have the BMD-4, when it comes to the mobility department, it's kind of hard to notice a difference between the BMD-4M and the older event vehicle version. This is until you unequip the additional armor section. Technically in game it's called the additional ERA kit. This removes 1 ton of weight to the vehicle. This drops the BMD-4M's weight down to 14 tons, and combined with the new engine producing 500 horsepower, gives you a power to weight ratio of 35.7 horsepower per ton, compared to the event BMD-4 that has a power to weight ratio of 33.1. So it is a very marginal improvement compared to the older vehicle, but the BMD-4 was already cracked in the mobility department, so the BMD-4M is just oh so much better. The tank is very fast, able to reach a top speed of 70 km per hour going forwards and 20 km per hour in reverse. And with that fantastic power to weight ratio, you can easily reach those speeds and hand out a ass beating and then quickly retreat into cover. This means that the BMD-4M is incredibly good no matter what stage of the game you are currently in. At the start of a match you can easily rush to a strong position, hold that position and basically blast anyone that comes around a corner. In the late stages of a game you're kind of like a Gepard on steroids. You've all been there, the late stage of a game, you're rushing, not really paying attention, and then a Gepard just spanks you from the side with its DM13. Well, the BMD-4M is like that but 10 times better. You've got an incredibly potent 30mm cannon, as well as some incredibly spicy 100mm anti-tank missiles. So whether you're rushing at the start of a match or roaming in the late stages of a game, the BMD-4M is an absolute monster when it comes to getting around the battlefield. We now move on to the survivability, and in true Russian fashion, you have absolutely none. The BMDs were designed as the VDV's IFV, so they were designed to literally be thrown out the back of an aircraft. This means they have paper-thin armour, making them vulnerable to anything other than rifle caliber machine guns. This means even from the side you can be killed by 50 cals, not to mention even the smaller 25mm NATO IFV guns. But covering the basics, and first of all we have a crew of 3 men, all are located around the centre of mass of the vehicle, basically meaning any penetrating round is almost certainly going to insta-kill you. The BMD is also packed with internal modules controlling things like the missile, the fire control system, as well as stuff like the stabilizer, meaning any round that misses a crew member is almost certainly going to destroy something important. As I said previously in the mobility section, the tank does have an optional equipable additional ERA kit. This adds applique armor to the side of the tank and adds 1 additional ton of weight. For the additional mass, you don't really get much protection, with the tank's own 30mm cannon easily being able to penetrate this armour, even at ranges exceeding 500 meters. Because of this, I'd recommend unequipping this additional ERA and favouring the enhanced speed, rather than the additional mediocre armour. All in all, from the front you have around 60mm of armour on the hull, and 40mm of armour on the turret, and on the side of the vehicle we have about 40mm of armour. As I said, the BMD-4s were designed to be thrown out of aircraft, so they just didn't bother with armour at all, to be honest. In return, it has made the BMD-4M incredibly potent at getting around the battlefield. It's kind of like a massive rat tank you can easily get to places most enemies wouldn't expect, especially potent at the start of a match. You can just basically rush to behind like a corner and wait for enemies to rush around it, but in return it has made you incredibly vulnerable to basically anything on the battlefield, especially things such as close air support, artillery, and even the very mediocre 105mm high explosive shells can easily ruin your day. But if this tank was as easy to kill as it sounds like on paper, people wouldn't be moulding and claiming that it's overpowered now, would they? For anyone that's already played the BMP3 or the BMD4, the firepower of the BMD-4M is going to be very familiar. Your main gun is the 30mm 2A72. This has 6 degrees of gun depression and 60 degrees of elevation, easily allowing you to engage helicopters and low-flying aircraft. But the gun depression is a little limiting. Your 30mm gun has 3 different belts available, with the main one being the APDS belt, allowing you to penetrate 82mm of armour at point blank range. This easily allows you to bully the weak sides of NATO MBTs, which generally only have around 40mm of side armour. In comparison, most Soviet and Chinese MBTs have around 80mm of side armour. This is why the 25mm armed NATO IFVs are so lackluster at 9.3. The 25 and 30mm cannons just cannot reliably go through the 80mm of side armour that the T-series tanks have. But seeing as the BMD-4M will very rarely have to fight fellow Soviet players, it makes the 30mm cannon very strong indeed. We also carry the 100mm 2A70 rifled gun. Seeing as this vehicle is an infantry support vehicle, the 100mm gun was made for slinging high explosive rounds into enemy bunkers, and it can do this very effectively, firing every 5 seconds. The HE rounds though are quite lackluster, the best of which, the 30F70, can only penetrate 36mm of armour, leaving it unable to overpressure many MBTs at its own batter rating. But it is still useful against the many NATO IFVs running around. But by far the most useful weapon carried by the BMD-4M is the 9M117M1, a tandem charge anti-tank missile, capable of penetrating 750mm of armour. This round is basically your main weapon, and is used more like a shotgun rather than a long-range sniper. The missiles deals a huge amount of damage, and usually will kill in a single hit if fired at the centre mass of an enemy player. Whereas most NATO anti-tank missiles are fired from tubes mounted above the vehicle, the missile fired by the BMD-4M is obviously fired from the barrel. This means you can basically just point and click when someone comes around a corner, and you don't really have to deal with the parallax between the missile and the sight, for example. You know what I mean? You don't really have any difficulty aiming the missile at very short ranges, which is something you do have on vehicles such as the Bradley or the Marder, for example. The fantastic firepower given to you by the 130mm cannons is also dramatically increased by the 2nd gen thermal imager for the gunner sight, which easily allows you to acquire targets and is a huge buff compared to most of the vehicles running around 9.3, which generally only have Gen 1 thermals if they have thermals at all. To conclude, the reason for this tank being so hated at the minute is due to the combination of fantastic firepower and exceptional mobility, making it incredibly deadly in the early stages of a game, as a BMD-4M can easily outflank an enemy team comprising of early MBTs, turning the BMD-4M into a savage ambush predator. The fact that most of your enemies are also going to be early NATO MBTs which have non-existent side armor makes the BMD very powerful, as you can basically just go through the side of any MBT you come across, whereas NATO IFVs basically can't do the same to Soviet and Chinese MBTs. In terms of grinding though, the BMD being a rank 6 premium kind of makes it not worth it in my opinion. You can spend just a little bit more and get a rank 7 premium such as the T80UD or the good old T72AV terms. While neither of those vehicles are as flexible or as overpowered as the BMD-4M, they are overall better value for money if you are purely looking for one premium for grinding out the entire Soviet tech tree. That being said, if you don't care about grinding and just want to print Silver Lions and have a bit of fun, or maybe you're just looking for a great backup vehicle in your top tier Soviet lineup, well then the BMD-4M is the premium for you. Just remember, it is incredibly overpriced, just like every other top tier premium, but if you're willing to spend your money on it, then it's not for me to tell you what to do with your own hard-earned money. As always lads, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always I'd like to say a huge thank you to my YouTube members. This video would just not be possible without them. So again, a huge thank you to Lola Alphonse, Tans, Deboa LX, Dr. Bob, Tomster013, Schlunty, Van Haler, Diogenes, Pumpin, Econ, and newest member, Minami Productions. Thank you once again for watching lads. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave a comment saying Russian bias.